The crystalline spires of the Volterian Empire pierced the violet sky of Valterra Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Princess Thera stood at her private observatory, her iridescent skin shifting between shades of silver and blue as she studied the latest reports from the outer colonies. Each data stream told the same story, one her people desperately tried to hide. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Despite the Empire's attempts to contain and control them, their settlements grew stronger, their innovations more impressive with each passing cycle. They adapted to hostile environments, turned barren worlds into gardens, and built communities that defied the Empire's predictions of failure. Thera's crystalline interface chimed, interrupting her thoughts. "Your presence is required in the Grand Council chamber, Your Highness," announced the automated system. "The matter is most urgent." She knew what this meant. Her recent inquiries into the human colonies hadn't gone unnoticed. The Council's spies were everywhere, and her sympathy for the lesser species was well documented. Still, she straightened her ceremonial armor, its liquid metal surface rippling with her movement, and made her way to face whatever awaited her. The Grand Council chamber was a marvel of Volterian architecture, with walls that seemed to breathe and shift, creating patterns that reflected the emotions of those within. Today, they swirled with dark undertones of anger and fear. High Counselor Nexus, his aged face bearing the traditional markings of the Empire's oldest bloodlines, sat at the center of the semicircular platform. "Princess Thera," his voice resonated through the chamber, "you stand accused of treason against the Empire. Your communications with human resistance cells have been monitored. Your attempts to undermine our containment protocols are documented. How do you answer these charges?" Thera felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down upon her, but she refused to bow. "I answer them with truth, High Counselor. The Empire's treatment of humans isn't just wrong, it's destroying us. While we stagnate behind our crystal walls, they create, adapt, and evolve. We call them primitive, yet they've achieved in decades what took us centuries." Murmurs of outrage rippled through the assembled council members. Nexus's eyes narrowed, the bioluminescent patterns beneath his skin flashing with barely contained fury. "You dare suggest these creatures are our equals?" "I suggest they might be our salvation," Thera countered. "Our empire has grown rigid, fearful of change. The humans' greatest strength isn't their technology or their adaptability, it's their ability to embrace the unknown, to see possibility where we see only chaos." "Enough." Nexus rose, his robes flowing like liquid starlight. "Your words confirm your betrayal. Princess Thera, you are hereby stripped of your titles and privileges. By ancient law, you are declared nameless, to be hunted across every world until dash." The chamber's lights flickered, then died. In the confusion, Thera activated the phase shifter she'd hidden beneath her armor. The device, crafted by human engineers, enveloped her in a field of distorted spacetime. As guards rushed forward, their weapons passing harmlessly through her shifting form, she spoke one final time. "You call this justice, but your fear betrays you. Change is coming to the Empire, whether you welcome it or not." She ran, not toward the main exits where guards would be waiting, but toward the chamber's ceremonial waterfall. The phase shifter's effect wouldn't last long, but she only needed a few moments. As she dove through the cascading liquid crystal, ancient defensive systems activated, sealing the chamber behind her. The maintenance tunnels below the palace were a maze of twisting corridors and forgotten passages. Thera moved swiftly, her breathing steady despite the growing sound of pursuit. Her destination was clear, the abandoned docking bays in the lower city, where she'd arranged for help from an unexpected source. As she rounded the final corner, she found herself face to face with a human. He stood casually beside a battered ship, his dark skin contrasting with the silver flight suit he wore. A slight smile played across his features as he gave an exaggerated bow. "You're late, Your Highness," he said, gesturing toward his ship. "I'm Raven. Welcome to the Resistance." Behind them, alarm sirens began to wail. The hunt had begun, but as Thera boarded the ship, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. The Empire had created its own worst enemy by underestimating humanity. Now, they would learn just how costly that mistake would be. Raven's ship, the Star Weaver, lurched into hyperspace just as the first Imperial patrol vessels emerged from Valterra Prime's atmosphere. Inside the cramped cockpit, Thera watched her homeworld shrink into a distant speck before vanishing completely. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She was now a fugitive from the most powerful empire in known space. "You're taking this better than most royals I've rescued," Raven remarked, his fingers dancing across the ship's worn control panels. "Usually there's more screaming about accommodations. How many exiled princesses have you rescued?" Thera asked, studying the human pilot. His movements were precise, efficient, military training, she guessed, though he carried himself with a deliberately casual air. "You'd be surprised," he grinned, then his expression turned serious. "But you're the first who chose exile to defend humans. That makes you either incredibly brave or spectacularly foolish." "Perhaps both," Thera admitted. "The Empire's propaganda about humans never quite matched the data. Your species adapts too quickly, innovates too readily. The Council fears what they can't control." The ship's sensors chirped a warning. Raven's expression tightened as he checked the readings. "Speaking of control, we've got company. Looks like your friends didn't appreciate your farewell speech." 3 Imperial warships dropped out of hyperspace behind them, their crystalline hulls gleaming with barely contained energy. Thera recognized the configuration: Hunter-class vessels, designed for pursuit and capture. Her hand instinctively moved to the ship's weapons console, but Raven caught her wrist. "Not that way," he said, pulling up a new navigation course. "Time to show you why humans are really dangerous. We don't just think outside the box, we pretend it never existed." The Star Weaver dove toward a massive debris field, the remains of an ancient space battle. The Imperial ships followed, their superior engines quickly closing the gap. But as Thera watched, she began to understand Raven's strategy. The human wasn't flying away from the pursuers, he was flying deeper into the field, using the chaos of tumbling wreckage to mask their trajectory. "The Empire builds perfect ships for perfect conditions," Raven explained, weaving through a corridor of spinning metal. "But space isn't perfect. It's messy, unpredictable, just like humans." A massive hull section loomed ahead, and Raven aimed straight for a jagged tear in its side. Thera's breath caught as they threaded through the opening with barely meters to spare. Behind them, the Imperial ships were forced to alter course, their larger frames unable to follow. "That won't stop them for long," Thera observed, watching the pursuers split up to circumnavigate the obstacle. "It doesn't need to," Raven replied. He flipped a series of switches, and the ship's engine signature changed completely. "Welcome to Lesson 1 in Human Ingenuity, Adaptive Camouflage. The Star Weaver can mimic the energy patterns of any ship class in her database. Right now, we look like just another piece of space junk." They drifted silently, watching as the Imperial ships regrouped and began a methodical search pattern. After several tense minutes, the hunters jumped back to hyperspace, presumably to search the next sector. "Impressive," Thera admitted. "Though I suspect this isn't the end of our troubles." "Not even close," Raven agreed, plotting a new course. "But that's why we're heading to Eden, humanity's greatest secret, and your first real glimpse of what we can do when we're pushed too far." The coordinates he entered led to a sector of space marked as quarantined on Imperial charts, supposedly the site of a devastating plague outbreak centuries ago. But as the Star Weaver emerged from hyperspace, Thera realized she was seeing yet another Imperial lie unravel. Instead of an abandoned wasteland, a thriving settlement spread across a massive asteroid field. Ships of various designs moved between the rocks, while habitat modules and hydroponic gardens created a sprawling network of interconnected life. Most remarkably, she saw humans working alongside other alien species, including some she recognized as fellow exiles from the Empire. "Welcome to the real resistance," Raven said softly. "Turns out humans aren't the only ones who think the Empire needs to change." As they docked at one of the outer stations, Thera felt her perspective shifting once again. The Empire had taught that humans were chaotic, dangerous, and primitive. Looking at Eden, she saw something different. They were adaptable, inclusive, and unbound by the rigid traditions that had stagnated her own people. "Your species continues to surprise me," she said as they walked through the station's corridors. Humans and aliens moved purposefully around them, some nodding respectfully to Raven as they passed. "That's our specialty," he replied. "But now comes the hard part, turning you from a symbol of the Empire into something they'll fear even more, proof that change is possible." A group of resistance leaders waited in the station's command center, a mix of humans and aliens, all united by their opposition to imperial rule. As Thera looked at their faces, she realized that her personal rebellion had become something much larger. She wasn't just fighting for human rights anymore, she was part of a movement that could reshape the galaxy. The morning cycle of Eden Station found Thera in the combat training area, her iridescent skin glistening with exertion. 2 weeks had passed since her arrival, and she'd insisted on learning human fighting techniques. Her current opponent, a resistance fighter named Kai, circled her with practiced grace. "The Empire trained you to fight with technology," Kai said, closing the distance with explosive speed. "We'll teach you to fight with everything else." Thera barely blocked his strike, the impact sending shockwaves through her arms. Without her ceremonial armor's enhancement systems, every movement required more effort, more precision. But she was learning, adapting, just as humans had always done. "Commander Lagos requests your presence in operations," announced the station's AI, interrupting their session. "Priority level, urgent." In the operations center, Raven stood with Commander Diana Lagos, a stern-faced woman whose cybernetic eye constantly scanned tactical displays. The room buzzed with unusual activity. "We've intercepted Imperial communications," Lagos began without preamble. "They're planning to test a new weapon system on the Meridian colony. Supposedly to pacify a human uprising." Thera's blood ran cold. "The Purification Protocol. I saw early reports during my final days in the palace. It's designed to alter atmospheric composition, make planets uninhabitable for specific species. They're going to suffocate an entire colony." Raven's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Unless we stop them." Lagos nodded. "That's where you come in, Princess. We need your codes and knowledge of Imperial protocols. This isn't just about saving lives, it's our chance to prove the Empire's true nature to the neutral systems." "I'll do more than that," Thera replied, studying the tactical display. "I know the scientist who developed the protocol. Dr. Venn. He's not a true believer in Imperial supremacy, he's being coerced. If we can extract him, we could gain both intelligence and a propaganda victory," Lagos finished. "But the facility where they're preparing the weapon is on Nexus Prime, the most heavily defended planet in the sector." Raven grinned. "Good thing we humans specialize in impossible odds." The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. Thera found herself working alongside humans and aliens, amazed by how quickly they adapted their plans to incorporate new information and overcome obstacles. Where Volterian military doctrine demanded perfect conditions and overwhelming force, these rebels embraced chaos as an ally. "Your people plan campaigns like they're programming computers," Raven observed as they prepared their infiltration gear. "Every variable accounted for, every contingency mapped out. But combat isn't computational, it's organic, fluid. Is that why humans seem to thrive in crisis?" Thera asked, checking her modified phase shifter. The human engineers had enhanced its capabilities, though she noticed their improvements favored practical effectiveness over aesthetic perfection. "We adapt or die," Raven replied simply. "Earth taught us that lesson long before we reached the stars. Natural disasters, climate change, wars, each crisis forced us to evolve or face extinction. Your empire never faced that kind of pressure." Their plan took shape. While the main resistance fleet launched a diversionary attack on the Imperial shipyards, a small team would infiltrate the research facility. Thurah's knowledge of Imperial security systems would get them inside, while Raven's expertise in improvised tactics would help them navigate the chaos once the alarms inevitably sounded. As they boarded the Star Weaver, now modified with experimental stealth systems, Thurah felt a familiar tension in her chest. But this time, it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. The Empire had taught that order came through control, through the suppression of chaos. But watching these humans prepare for battle, she saw a different truth. True strength came from embracing uncertainty, from finding harmony within chaos itself. "Having second thoughts?" Raven asked as they lifted off from Eden Station. Thurah shook her head. "For the first time, I'm having the right thoughts. The Empire fears humans because you represent everything they can't control. You adapt, improvise, defy predictions. After seeing Eden, I understand why." "And what did you see?" "A future worth fighting for. One where strength comes from diversity, not uniformity. Where species learn from each other instead of dominating one another." She paused, watching the stars blur into hyperspace streams. "The Empire calls humans primitive because you embrace emotion, instinct, individual choice. But those aren't weaknesses, they're the source of your greatest innovations." Raven studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You know, when I agreed to help rescue an Imperial princess, I expected someone different. More imperious? Rigid. Instead, you're almost human in how quickly you've adapted to all this. Perhaps that's why the Council feared my questions so much," Thurah replied. "They saw I could change, grow beyond their control. Like humans do." The ship sensors chimed, indicating their approach to Nexus Prime. Ahead lay a fortress world, bristling with defensive systems and Imperial warships. But as Thurah looked at her human companions, rebels and refugees who refused to submit to Imperial rule, she felt an unfamiliar emotion, excitement. They were about to prove that the Empire's greatest weakness was its failure to understand humanity's greatest strength. Not their technology or their numbers, but their fundamental nature, the ability to face impossible odds with innovation, courage, and an unwavering belief that change was always possible. The Star Weaver slipped through Nexus Prime's orbital defense grid like a shadow between stars. Raven's modified stealth systems, combined with Thurah's Imperial access codes, created an illusion of normalcy that fooled the automated scanners. But both knew their deception wouldn't last long once they landed. "The research facility is built into the mountain," Thurah whispered as they crouched in a maintenance tunnel. "Dr. Ven's lab will be in the lower levels, where they conduct the most sensitive experiments." Beside her, Raven checked his plasma rifle while Resistance fighter Kai monitored their surroundings with modified Imperial sensors. The fourth member of their team, a Syraxian engineer named Nyx whose crystalline body could bend light around itself, kept watch at the tunnel's entrance. "Security pattern is shifting," Kai reported. "We have 4 minutes until the next patrol." They moved like ghosts through the facility's service corridors, using Thurah's knowledge and human ingenuity to bypass security systems. Each step brought them closer to their target, but also increased the risk of discovery. The air grew thicker with tension. "Hold," Nyx whispered, her crystalline form shimmering. "Something's wrong. The energy signatures ahead don't match the facility schematics." Thurah frowned, studying the readings. "They've modified the security grid. These patterns, they're not standard Imperial protocols. Because they're expecting us, Raven concluded grimly. Not us specifically, but they knew someone would try to stop them. This whole setup feels like Dash. A trap, Thera finished. But not for us. For Dr. Ven. Understanding dawned on her face as pieces clicked into place. The Empire doesn't just want to test the purification protocol. They want to ensure its creator can never turn against them. This security isn't designed to keep intruders out. It's designed to keep him in, Raven nodded. Which means we're not just facing guards. We're facing whatever failsafe system they've built to eliminate him if he tries to escape. A distant alarm began to wail, its pitch rising and falling in an irregular pattern. Kai's sensor display erupted with new signatures. Multiple security teams converging. They're sealing off sections of the facility. Time for the human approach, Raven declared, pulling out a small device that looked cobbled together from spare parts. When you can't avoid chaos, create more of it, Thera finished, beginning to understand. She watched as he attached the device to a nearby power conduit. What is that? Something the engineers cooked up after studying your phase shifter. Instead of shifting matter, it shifts energy patterns. Should play havoc with their security systems. The device hummed to life, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Security doors slammed shut randomly, sensor systems reported phantom intruders, and communication channels filled with static. Now they have too many problems to solve, Kai grinned. Classic human strategy, when outnumbered, multiply yourself. They pushed deeper into the facility, using the confusion to their advantage. Guards rushed past their hiding spots, trying to respond to multiple security breaches that didn't exist. But as they approached the main laboratory level, resistance stiffened. Automated defense systems, Thera warned, recognizing the distinctive hum of Imperial combat drones. They won't be fooled by false alarms. Then we stop pretending, Raven replied, nodding to Nyx. The Syraxian's crystalline body began to glow, emitting a field that disrupted the drone's optical sensors. In the chaos that followed, they fought their way through, human combat instincts complementing alien abilities in ways the Empire had never anticipated. They found Dr. Ven in his lab, but he wasn't alone. High Counselor Nexus himself stood there, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. Behind him, the Purification Protocol's control system pulsed with deadly potential. I wondered when you would come, Princess, Nexus said, his voice carrying that same cold authority she remembered from the council chamber. Your human pets have taught you their barbaric efficiency, I see. They've taught me truth, Thera replied, her weapon trained on her former mentor. About strength, about adaptation, about the future. The Empire is dying, Nexus. It's dying because it fears change more than failure. Change? Nexus laughed, the sound brittle as breaking crystal. Look around you, child. This facility, this weapon, they represent change. The power to reshape worlds, to purify them of chaos. You still don't understand, Thera said, seeing real fear behind his confident facade. True power isn't about control. It's about growth. Humans don't just survive change, they embrace it, learn from it, become stronger because of it. Pretty words, Nexus sneered, but words won't save the Meridian colony. The protocol is already launching. In moments, millions of your precious humans will dash. He never finished the sentence. Dr. Ven, who had been seemingly cowering behind a console, suddenly moved. His hands flew across the control panel, entering a complex sequence of commands. Warning lights flashed as the facility's systems began to overload. What have you done? Nexus demanded, spinning toward the scientist. Something very human, Ven replied calmly. I adapted. The laboratory erupted into chaos as Ven's commands cascaded through the facility's systems. Nexus lunged for the control panel, but Raven was faster, tackling the High Counselor with unexpected force. Alarms blared as the purification protocol's launch sequence began to destabilize. "The containment field is collapsing," Ven shouted over the noise. "The protocol's base elements are highly reactive when they mix." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The entire facility was about to become a very large explosion. "How long?" Thera demanded, helping Raven subdue Nexus. "Minutes. Maybe less." Ven's hands flew across multiple control panels. "I can't stop the reaction, but I can redirect it. The facility's transmission array, if we can channel the energy through it. We can broadcast the truth to every system in range," Thera realized. "Show them what the Empire was willing to do to maintain control." Nexus laughed bitterly from the floor. "You'll die here with us, Princess. Your human allies too. All to expose a truth no one will believe." "That's where you're wrong," Raven said, securing the High Counselor's hands. "Humans have a saying, the truth always comes out. We just make it happen faster." They worked frantically as the facility began to tear itself apart. Ven and Kai rerouted power systems while Nyx used her crystalline form to stabilize critical junctions. Thera and Raven coordinated with the Resistance fleet, ensuring their transmission would reach as many worlds as possible. "Containment at 30% and falling," Ven reported. The air crackled with energy as the protocol's components began to break down. "Whatever we're going to do, it needs to happen now." Thera looked at the others, human, Syraxian, and her own people, all working together despite the Empire's efforts to keep them divided. In that moment, she understood what real strength looked like. "Begin the transmission," she ordered, stepping in front of the facility's main camera array. "People of the Empire, I am Princess Thera. What you are about to see is not rebellion or terrorism. It is truth." As automated systems recorded the facility's destruction and the Empire's plans for genocide, Thera spoke of everything she had learned. She told of human resilience, of their ability to find strength in diversity rather than uniformity. She spoke of Eden Station, where different species worked together to build something new. "The Empire taught us that chaos must be controlled," she declared, her voice carrying across light years. "But humans taught me that chaos is merely change, and change brings growth. Look around you. The Empire stagnates while humans innovate. They adapt while we remain rigid. They build communities while we build walls." The facility's superstructure groaned as energy levels approached critical. But still she continued, knowing these might be her last words. "I choose a different path. One where strength comes from cooperation, not domination. Where different species learn from each other instead of fearing each other. The Empire calls humans primitive because they embrace emotion, instinct, and individual choice. But those aren't weaknesses, they're the source of their greatest achievements." Suddenly, the Starweaver's engines roared to life outside the laboratory window. Raven grinned as he finished interfacing with the ship's remote systems. "That's our cue," he announced. "Time for one last human trick, improvising an escape plan." They ran for the ship as the facility began to collapse, dragging a protesting Nexus with them. The Starweaver's enhanced engines strained against the growing electromagnetic storm as they lifted off. Behind them, the research facility erupted in a cascade of energy that lit up the night sky. But their transmission had already gone out, carrying proof of the Empire's plans and evidence of its lies to every inhabited system within range. As they escaped into hyperspace, Thera knew there was no going back. The Empire would face questions it couldn't answer, truths it couldn't hide. 3 months later, Thera stood on a balcony overlooking Eden Station's newest addition, the diplomatic quarter. Representatives from dozens of worlds, including former Imperial territories, had gathered to discuss a new form of interstellar cooperation. "Quite a change from the council chamber," Raven said, joining her at the railing. Like her, he had traded combat gear for more formal attire, though he still moved with a warrior's grace. "Change is inevitable," she replied, watching aliens and humans mingle freely below. "The Empire just forgot how to embrace it." "And now?" Thera smiled, her iridescent skin reflecting the light of distant stars. "Now we build something new. Not an empire of control, but an alliance of equals. Human adaptability, Syraxian resilience, Volterian technology, imagine what we can achieve together." "Sounds like chaos," Raven observed with a grin. "Exactly," Thera agreed, taking his hand. "Beautiful, unpredictable, necessary chaos. Just the way humans like it." Above them, ships from a dozen worlds moved through space in intricate patterns, their crews learning to work together in ways the Empire had never imagined possible. Among them, the Star Weaver prepared for another mission, carrying the promise of change to distant stars. The Empire had feared human chaos would destroy their perfect order. Instead, it had shown them a better way, one where strength came not from controlling the universe, but from learning to dance with its endless possibilities. And in that dance, Thera had found not just a cause worth fighting for, but a future worth building. Together, they would write a new chapter in the story of their galaxy. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals united by their differences and strengthened by change itself. The dawn of unity had begun, and its light would reach even the darkest corners of space.